Coming back to tonight's topic, which is very interesting, mathematics, especially Indian mathematics, Bharatiya mathematics. Most of you might have heard that once upon a time, Mr. Albert Einstein said, we owe a lot to the Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worldwide scientific discovery could have been made. And I cannot agree more when we found out that one of the great researchers he lives in Melbourne. He has done extensive research in the field of mathematics from last 35 years. I'm talking about the presenter for tonight himself. His name is Jonathan Crabtree. And much without making much waiting for his very, very unique presentation tonight, I would like to call Mr. Jonathan to present a unique mathematics, Bharatiya mathematics to us all. So over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much for that welcome, and I am very grateful to the IAEF for inviting me. And I think it's worth starting off just with an acknowledgement that we are living in very difficult times, and that there are a lot of people suffering around the world under coronavirus, and our thoughts are with them. And I suppose that conversely, that's why we have opportunities of having online discussions that perhaps we wouldn't have otherwise. We'd probably be doing this face to face and have fewer people available. In India, this is at Vishva-Bharati University in Santiniketan in West Bengal. This is the National University of India. And as you can see, if I move out the way, students sit outside and learn underneath trees. And one of the things that's relevant, I believe, is that we don't need a lot of technology to teach mathematics. We need almost no technology to teach mathematics. All we need are the correct ideas. And if we've got the correct ideas, then we can teach mathematics just as simply as India did 2,000 years ago, out in nature, maybe with some chalk, maybe drawing in the dust. So the website is, if you wanted to get all of my presentations, all of my videos, all of my papers, everything I make available free of charge at the website, which you can see there on the blackboard, which is www.podo.in. So here I am holding the Indian flag and the Aussie flag, and I feel a bit of a kindred spirit with India because, as it happens, I'm born on the same birth date as Sachin Tendulkar, and also Australia and India, we also share our special days on the 26th of January as well. So it's not just cricket and curries that we share a fondness of. In my case, I've now acquired a taste for Indian mathematics that, as it happens, is not currently being taught in India. So there's the planet Earth, and what I'm asking the question is, will humans survive the next 500 years? If we think 500 years ago, that's a very short time in human history. And the mathematics that I'm researching goes back around about maybe 3 times that, maybe 1,500 years back into the past. But just as I'm going back 1,500 years into the past to explore mathematics, will we even be on planet Earth in 500 years' time? So I think that more than ever, there's a motivation for us to improve our mathematical thinking, because it's our mathematical thinking that's going to improve our problems that the world faces, whether it's land degradation, drought, poverty, pollution. We need better science, and science is driven ultimately by mathematics. So if we don't fix our mathematics, will we be giving the children of the future the tools that they need to fix the problems the world is confronted with now? So here I am. That's me at age 4. And I can tell you that age 4, can you see the resemblance? At age 4, I really loved counting. And I had happy memories of counting up to 20 and people's counting 1, 2, 5. And I go, no, you've left out numbers. I was very proud of my skills and abilities at age 4. But then at Elwood Primary School in grade 2, as you can see, I was starting to find mathematics hard. And I didn't understand how my teacher was explaining mathematics to me. And as it happens, my teacher was wrong, and the West had been wrong for around about 400 years. So, as strange as it seems, I then started to dislike mathematics because I started to feel confused by it. And at the time when I was at school, I didn't really enjoy mathematics. I felt a bit stupid, and I kept on questioning my teachers. And later on, I was told by my maths teacher, don't worry, Jonathan, mathematics is only confusing if you think about it. So we have to suspend our rational thinking and just get with the program, which is all about obeying the laws and the rules of mathematics. Don't question them. Don't ask why they exist. We just follow and obey the laws and the rules. And that's why many people don't particularly enjoy their mathematics. So here's an article that I wrote. Millions of minds think math is confusing. In 1983, I asked why. I decided in 1983 that I was going to fix mathematics. And I had this intuition that there was something wrong with mathematics. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it didn't make sense to me. It seemed illogical. And so in 1983, that's when I decided I was going to fix the way mathematics was understood and taught. And what I found is that the British colonists stuffed up the better ideas of Bharat's mathematics. And one of the things that's happened, unfortunately, is that the British never really understood the correct foundations of mathematics, because the British got their mathematical ideas from the Greeks, and the Greeks didn't have 0 and 1 as numbers, and the Greeks didn't have negative numbers either. So we had all of these mathematical ideas built without 0 and 1 being included in the definitions of our basic operations. So here's a photograph. I know British maths is not as good as Indian maths. I just hope Indians never find out. Too late, sir. People are signing the petition for Indian maths at that website. So I'm running a petition to change the way India's mathematics is being taught. And over 6,000 people have already signed the petition to basically drop the ideas of British math that are being taught up to around about class 8 and switch back to the superior maths of ancient Bharat. So who's this chap? He's one of the people who murdered mathematics. So as a historian, I've gone back through history and I have found all of the people who led to mathematics going astray and to perpetuating British mathematics at the expense of the true simple foundations of positives and negatives and 0, which India had back in the 7th century. So this chap here, his name is Mr Heath, and he's one of the people who are wanted for murder, for murdering India's mathematics. So from grade 2 is when I had my discussions with my school teacher here at Elwood Primary School. And what I realised in 1968 in class 2 was that India's Xero was missing from the British explanations of multiplication. And I argued with my teacher, and I lost the argument because she just confused me even more. But as it happens, I was correct, and my experience at age 7 became a peer-reviewed conference paper in which I talked about the history of how really simple mathematical ideas got lost. So, 1988, I decided to fix maths in 1983. In 1988, I started to make lots of headlines in the media. And if you look a little closely in that article, it says, "I hope to change the way the Western world teaches maths," Jonathan said. So I went public with my goal over 30 years ago that I was wanting to fix the way the Western world teaches maths, but now it's the entire world. So what's happened is, if we went back to all of the history of the evolution of mathematics, what we find is that all the pages that deal with India's mathematics have been ripped out from history. And all we ever hear about is Pythagoras and Euclid and Isaac Newton and Euler and René Descartes and so on. But we don't have the stories of Āryabhaṭa and Brahmagupta and Bhāskara and others as part of our school curriculum. And yet the sad fact is that it's Indian mathematics that we should be crediting, not the Arabs. And more importantly, the ideas of Brahmagupta, who basically wrote the rule book for positive numbers, negative numbers, and zero, his very simple ideas are not even being taught in India today. So my goal is to fix that situation by going to India and teaching children. So here you can see in one lecture, I've got 550 children attending a maths class. So here I am in a slightly smaller setting in Howrah in West Bengal, and it doesn't really matter what year level I have. The ideas are very simple, very logical, and people are very excited because they are Indian ideas that are making sense to them. So here I am giving a lecture, and here you can see 49 lines of Sanskrit text. And what I have done with the help of many Indian professors and Sanskritists is I've kind of analysed and interpreted the ancient shlokas of India and pulled them apart to reassemble the building blocks of elementary mathematics. So this is an article in a business magazine in India. Brahmagupta's 18 laws of mathematics are completely missing from India's present mathematics curriculum. So Brahmagupta's 18 laws, in India, you might say Brahmagupta's 18 sutras. So here are Brahmagupta's 18 laws, and what we see are some laws that are shaded. So for example, addition law number 4, when positive and negative are equal, the sum is 0. In the West, we're told that by definition, negatives are always less than positives. But that's not how physics works. So in physics, if you've got a negative electron and a positive positron, they come together, they meet, they then release some energy and they disappear to 0. So in physics, a force going that direction can be equal and opposite to a force going in that direction, We don't say that a negative force is greater or less than a positive force of the same amount of newtons. Those forces in opposite directions are equal and opposite. What we find is that Brahmagupta's laws are completely compatible with physics in ways that Western arithmetic is not. If we look at subtraction laws 2 and 3, these things are completely the opposite of what has been taught in the West for the last 500 years or so. I'm not going to go into great detail now, but all my slideshows are on my website. You can download the videos and also the PowerPoint slides, and you'll see exactly what I'm on about there. Now, what happened? How did this logic of mathematics go astray? It's very simple. Back in the 7th century, Brahmagupta, on the far right-hand side, defined zero by addition of equal positive and negative, but the zero that travelled west was only the simple placeholder zero that we use, not as a sum of positives and negatives of equal quantity as defined by Brahmagupta. So by the time over the centuries, we get mathematics arriving in London, which basically then got exported by the British Empire, they did not have the correct understanding of zero being a sum of equal and opposite positives and negatives. If we suddenly have the ideas of Brahmagupta, what happens is symmetry gets restored to mathematics, and all those things that don't make any sense whatsoever suddenly become child's play, literally. If we look at the number line here, if I shrink myself down a little bit more, you can see on the right-hand side, we've got counts of positive quantities. And on the left-hand side, we've got counts of negative quantities. And if we took 2 positives and 2 negatives together, they sum to 0. So if you added up all of the numbers on the real number line, it sums to 0. It makes no sense for negatives to be less than positives. And in fact, a funny thing is in the history books, it's quite possible that if England had been at war with Ireland instead of the Dutch in the 17th century, our positive numbers would have gone off to the left and our negative numbers would have gone off to the right. So there are many things in history that are just fluky ideas that somehow people think are logical and scientific, when really they're just assumptions that people follow and ideas that people had that really should be taken out of the curriculum because they are inconsistent with the destination of physics and engineering and so on, which demands the laws of physics agree with the laws of mathematics. So the explanations of zero and positive and negative that came out of the British Empire, many of those definitions are absolutely false. And because many of the ideas of the British had the incorrect foundations, they often had to introduce laws and rules for people to follow to make sure the numbers were correct. So many of the laws and rules that people have been learning for centuries are not a part of mathematics. The laws and rules of mathematics are very often simply bug fixes and workarounds to fix the answers so we get the correct answer. So what we do know is that the ideas of the British are problematic, but the ideas of zero, positive, negative from India are true. They are logically consistent from class 1 all the way through to the real number system and likely beyond. I guess that's pretty much my 20-minute time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this presentation now to keep us on track and hand back to you, Steve. So if you've got any questions that either you've got or who've been asked by people watching this, I'm very happy to answer some of those questions people might have.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I hope that's a very revealing and thought-provoking, presentation which you all enjoyed. So I'll hand it over to Stephen Manolak, who's himself is a published author, has written a couple of books, and he's an expert on PR relations between India and Australia, and he's also a pillar of India-Australia Exchange Forum. You can find his books online, and he's very famous for one of his blogs as well. It's called intoindia.blog. So without much ado, I'll hand it over to Stephen Manolak to take all your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Shivesh, and thank you so much to Jonathan for that presentation. I don't come from a mathematic background, probably because the way it was taught to me at school put me right off it as well. I'm not sure. But I have learned so many things so far from India. And the depth of knowledge across so many fields of science and mathematics is stunning. The question I've got to start with is this. We have a very strong Indian diaspora here in Melbourne and in Australia. They make a major contribution to the life of Australia. And we have multiple, I think, almost 100,000 Indian university students here as well. So this is a significant part of our population. I'm sure as they hear your message, they will want to get on board and assist you with your work. What kind of things could they do, could the diaspora do to support getting your message across?
Well, thank you, Steve. That's a great question. I think that fundamentally, the ideas are so simple, they should be able to be shared with young children by older siblings or parents. So I've got some videos up on podometic.in about class 1. I have downloads on the website that people can download and play games and so on. I think that the fundamental thing that people have to realize is that the ideas that I'm talking about can be understood by children at age 7 and 8. And I think that there's an opportunity for university students. My youngest son is just finishing a PhD in quantum computing at Melbourne University now. And he's got quite a few colleagues from India. So I'm very aware, having gone to Melbourne University myself, of the number of Indian students at Melbourne University. I think that really the idea is just to raise awareness and tell their friends and family members to visit podometic.in. And Podometic is simply the update of arithmetic. So arithmetic is from ancient Greece, from 300 BC, and Podometic is based on Bharatiya mathematics, which is 1,000 years newer than the Greek mathematics that formed our mathematical foundations now. So really, I guess I'm very open to talking anywhere, anytime about mathematics. It is my passion. I have twice quit well-paying careers to make this my full-time passion. And whether it's visiting schools after coronavirus or online talks, if there are any organizations from the Indian diaspora who want me to talk about it, I'm more than happy. And in fact, just try and stop me from talking. I love my life. I dream about mathematics most nights. I wake up out of dreams of mathematics and talk straight into my dictaphone. So I feel a very lucky person, and the joy that people get when they understand how simple mathematics is a beautiful thing to see happen. I've had on several occasions grown men who have shaken my hand and almost teared up because for the first time in their life, these grown men have realized they were not stupid at school. They were like me. They didn't understand all the building blocks of mathematics, and it didn't make any sense and they resented being forced to memorize everything in mathematics without any understanding. So really, it's just a kind of an awareness thing. If people want to help raise awareness of it, follow me on Twitter at @Crabtree, and you'll see lots of links and lots of information there to share with others that might be part of your extended family.
Now, there's a question from Giovanna here. Does your research fit into ethno mathematics? It's not an expression I've heard before. Ethno-mathematics. Do you know what that is?
Well, ethno-mathematics is really looking at the different cultural aspects of mathematics. Yeah. So I think that one of the issues about mathematics is fundamentally we're born with mathematics hardwired into our brain. Yeah. And really what happens as soon as we start to have people teach us mathematics, that starts to destroy our natural ability to understand mathematics. Let me give you an example. When we are at about the age of 12 months, we already understand inverse proportion. Now you think, what? At 12 months, a baby at 1 year of age understands inverse proportion, and I will give you evidence of the reason why they do. As the mother gets smaller, the distance to the mother gets greater, and the child starts to cry. As the mother gets larger in the sight of the child knows the distance to the mother gets less. So that's actually a mathematical geometric relationship of inverse proportion that we understand hardwired into our brains. And one of the reasons why is that it's wired into our limbic system through fight or flight. We have to be able to gauge distance to that lion or that tiger. And if that tiger, we gauge that distance wrong, we're that tiger's dinner. So we start off with very simple ideas in mathematics, and then we get those ideas taken out of our heads by being taught what we think are mathematical ideas, but increasingly they are annoying us, and we don't like the mathematics we learn at school, but up to kindergarten, we love playing with our blocks, we love playing with our Lego, we are constructing buildings before we go to school. Yeah. One of the toys we have is fitting round pegs in round holes, and we have blocks that we have to match the shapes into the little cutouts in the wood. We love geometry toys, we love games, but we don't like mathematics. The same children who struggle with mathematics at school love working out how to get to the next level on that computer game. So discovery is addictive, and problem solving is a whole lot of fun for children, but we don't like solving problems in mathematics. And the reason why is because the very simple ideas that we are told at school make no sense. And I can't be clear enough on that, that there are many ideas in the mathematics curriculums all around the world that should be thrown into the rubbish bin, like multiplication is repeated addition, like negative numbers are less than 0. We're told that these ideas are meant to be logical, and if you study mathematics, it makes you clever and smart. And only the best students study mathematics, and they're very good at their logical thinking. But it's actually the opposite. If you have struggled with mathematics, it shows you're a deep thinker. You're looking for the sense, and it's not there. So the ethno-mathematics is a very interesting thing, that basically where the British Empire didn't really have much impact, their mathematics is superior. So the British really didn't dominate China, and guess which country is the dominant country in mathematics in the world today? China.
Well, the British were too busy selling them opium, I think. Let's not get stuck into the British, but there's a question here about when was the Xero actually identified? in India? When do you say it was discovered?
I've written a chapter in a mathematics book about that issue. And there are people disputing what zero is when we ask that question about who discovered or invented zero. Now, back in ancient Egypt, so maybe 5,000 years ago, they had a concept called nefer, which was a line that was used for making the land level for putting the foundations of buildings. And they would have a rope, and they would have above nefer, and they would have below nefer. And nefer in the Egyptian language means beautiful. Now, that's kind of a little bit like a zero, but it never got really into their mathematics system. It never got as a part of base 10. So other people say other cultures had ideas of zero, but really it's only India that had zero as part of a positional base 10 notation system that mediated equal and opposite quantities of positives and negatives. Now, Āryabhaṭa documented base 10 in the year 499, and his base 10 had implicit a zero in it. People are debating whether zero appeared in the Bhāskara manuscript, which is definitely in those the Bhāskara manuscript, but people aren't really agreeing what date the Bhāskara manuscript was written. It might be anywhere between 200 CE and possibly 800 CE. So I think that it's not even necessarily the correct question about who invented zero or who first discovered it. I think that really the idea is who had the mathematical zero. And by way of example, the Chinese had ideas of positives and negatives in the 2nd century BC. But the first Chinese maths book that had a zero came out in the year 1247, about 600 years after India's zero was well established. So it's fun to talk about who invented zero or where did it first appear. And I'm likely to go off and speak at a conference about that very topic. But I'd much rather that we start to teach children about zero and how to think about it in mathematics from their very first understanding of number. Right now, I look at my laptop computer, and if anyone's got a laptop computer, just look down on your laptop above the QWERTY keyboard and tell me where is the zero on your keyboard. It should be before the number 1 on your keyboard, but the zero is on to the right of the digit 9. That's not where zero is meant to be. So even on our keyboards for our computers, the zero is in the wrong spot. So, and it really gets down to the fact that in 300 BC, the Greeks defined number as a multitude of units. So the Greeks didn't have 1 as a number, and many people up until a couple of hundred years ago said numbers started at 2, which is pretty strange. But I better stop talking or else we're not going to get to the next question.
No, I think it's great. I've got some more questions coming in, but you mentioned the Greeks, and for that, some people in the audience may not be aware that most of the way Westerners think comes from the Greek heritage. And so when I take people over on trade missions to India, I say, now the first thing you have to be aware of is that culturally, Indian thinking is what we call relativism, relative thinking, that it's hard to be absolutely true or absolutely this, absolutely that. Everything is more complicated than we think it is. Whereas the Greeks said, no, absolutes are there. You can find absolute truth. You can find absolute goodness. So it means that the Western mind, like mine, is not very flexible and not good at adapting to India and, in fact, to the whole of Asia. But there was a comment from Cosmic Maths. There's an interesting title here for someone who signed in. has mentioned that connection to life around us is the best way to create interest in mathematics. Your comment on that, please, Jonathan.
Life is fun. And what we don't have in a lot of maths classes at primary school level is the wow factor. Now, as an example, there's mathematics of shadows. And if you wanted to know how high a football goalpost was, then say at mid-morning, you get all the children to come to school and bring a stick. And maybe at around about 11 o'clock in the morning, you all go outside and you all tell those children to put their stick in the ground. And you say, what do you notice about the shadow? And those children will say, well, the shadow of my stick is the same length as the height of my stick. And it doesn't matter if all the sticks are different heights. Now, that means that the shadow of the goalpost is also as long as the goalpost is as high. So straight away, from probably class 2, we can go outside and we can use ideas that later we'll talk about as being similar triangles. But we can start off getting children to go home that night and say, Mum, Dad, guess what? I can tell you how high anything is without a tape measure. And the parents will be astounded and the children will explain how shadows work. And guess what? If it's a cloudy day or if it's a different time of the day, you can just hold up a pencil and you put it in front of the goalpost and you have somebody stand next to the goalpost. And then what you do is you make the pencil that you're holding as high as the goalpost. And then what you do is you rotate it sideways. You get your friend to walk out to where you can see them at the end of the pencil, and that's how high the goalpost is. So aren't there some really amazing things? And guess what? We've got an idea of a constant radius of a circle, and we've got the idea of proportion, and we've got similar triangles, and we've got children's heads exploding with amazement that they can do all of this really cool stuff. But instead, what we do is we get them to rote learn the times tables.
Yeah, interesting.
And mathematics is no longer, in 2020, mathematics is no longer about calculation. We talk to our phones now. We talk to Google. We don't have to calculate anymore. Mathematics in 2020 is all about concepts and understanding. So let's not spend years drilling and killing the enthusiasm for mathematics. Let's get straight into the really good stuff, amazing stuff. And then children will be talking about logarithms in class 3. What? No way. Jonathan, you're crazy. There are many people who are watching this who wouldn't understand some of the ideas that children are comfortable with in class 2 if you have the correct explanations. And if you just tap into how children love to play, they love to build, I'd almost advocate that Bharatiya mathematics, or podometic as I call it, we may as well just call it science. So just teach children science. And guess what? Then we count and then we measure those things that we build. And by the counting and the measuring, we can then work out the equations. And then having counted and measured things in real life, we've created equations. Guess what? We can find how they all share similarities, and we can create our own definitions of mathematics that are true. Whereas definitions of mathematics in the West are total rubbish. Let me give you a quick example. In the West, the definition of multiplication of A into B, or A multiplied by B, is A added to itself B times. That's how definition of multiplication is. AB is defined as A added to itself B times. So from that definition of multiplication, I can see people nodding their head. 1 into 1, 1 multiplied by 1 equals 2. Because it's 1 added to itself 1 time. Now, that definition has been around since 1570, And nobody's fixed it except me back in 2016. And for me to fix that definition, I did my research in about 18 different languages. And I went back to the oldest manuscripts in the ancient Greek. I went into Latin, Sanskrit, Arabic, French, German, Italian, Russian, Dutch, Czech, Spanish, Hebrew. I did all my research, because if I didn't, I'd be the heretic, I'd be the crazy guy who people would ignore. So the reason it's taken me 37 years from 1983 until now to start talking about it is I've actually done more homework than anybody in history when it comes to understanding the foundations of elementary mathematics. So I can go head to head with any mathematics professor, anywhere, anytime, and I'll give explanations of mathematics that young children understand exactly how mathematics works. The professors, they will talk they'll give you laws, they'll give you rules, but they will not give you explanations that make sense. That's the difference between Western mathematics and India's mathematics that I'm trying to revive.
That's a lovely summary. Thank you for that. And let me finish this question segment with just a quick question from Vijay Shetty, which and presumably he's as enthused as I am by what he's hearing here. Is saying, have you ever tried to lobby with the government of India, the HRD ministry, or any department there with your proposition about the teaching of mathematics?
Great question. Thank you, Vijay. I have written letters to Nishank, the education minister. I have written letters to Narendra Modi. I have written letters to the people in charge of the curriculum. I have written to the people at NCERT, and some of those letters are on my website. If you go to my Twitter account and just go and click on the media link on Twitter, @Crabtree, look at the images. You'll see lots of letters I've been sending. Unfortunately, I can't send hard copy letters because India is not accepting international mail, it seems, from Australia. So I went to print them off and send them by hard mail, and I was told there's no international mail because of coronavirus.
Oh, yeah.
So I suspect that all of my letters, that again, you'll see them on my Twitter at @Crabtree, they're very logical. They talk about the GDP benefit. At a minimum, India's GDP will have an increase of 6% in a decade. That's 6% increase in GDP at a minimum by switching to podometic Bharatiya mathematics. And the reason why is that India, in its last international comparison conducted by PISA, India ranked 73 out of 74 countries. So China's #1 in mathematics, and India internationally is second last. Now, there's a direct correlation between academic achievements in mathematics and GDP. So as soon as you lift your mathematics performance, the GDP as a consequence rises because people get higher paying jobs, they generate more intellectual property, and that brings more GDP to the country. So I have attempted, yes, good question, I have tried, but I think that at this stage, it's natural for the Indian politicians to be very distracted with issues like exams and coronavirus, and many of the people who work in schools and the education departments are not at their phones at the moment because they're not at the schools. So I'll keep trying.
Good.
But it may well be that it's just, I have to be patient. Hopefully not for another 30 years, but I will keep trying, that's for sure.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. That's a nice finish to the question and answer segment. The knowledge of India is just staggering. And I'll hand back to Shivesh now, or Amit, to finish the session.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Jonathan, for answering all the wonderful questions. I wish we had more time. So we are almost towards the end of this presentation and question answer session. I would request you all, if you by any chance have more questions, you can send it directly to Jonathan on his email, which is very simple. It's q@podo.in. Q, just letter Q @podo.in. So I hope you all enjoyed the wonderful session by Jonathan, and you all can get connected through his social media channels. And we didn't realize that it's going to be such a discovery session for all of us. So I would like to invite, on behalf of IAF, our co-host and partner from HOTA Forum, which is Hindu Organization and Temple Association, Mr. Sharma.
Namaste all. My name is Sharma, as Ashwinji mentioned. It is a very interesting, intriguing session, Jonathan, and thank you very much for giving so many details. And it's a real eye-opener to me. Definitely, I can take a few of the ideas what you have mentioned as were excellent ideas. And one of the one rule what I have to remember always is the don't challenge the mathematical rules, just to obey and follow them. That's very good suggestion, and I will take that one into my regular habit of following the rules. Throughout the session, you have answered so many things, and you have given so much of information, and it is not easy to digest everything. And definitely, I will keep following you on Twitter and whatever you have mentioned, those resources. I will try to use them. Thank you very much for giving us this great insights. Again, Steve Manolak, you have done an excellent job organizing the Q&A session, and all these questions have been rightly put in such a way that everyone can understand it. Thank you very much for doing this one. Shiveshji, you have done a very good, excellent introduction about the IAEF, and thank you very much. And of course, I'm not new to your organization, but it will give a very good idea about the what you are doing and what your achievements are. Thank you very much. Before I conclude everything, and all the attendees for the Zoom session, thank you very much for logging in, and thank you for participating in this event. And also, last but not least, people who are watching live on their Facebook, thank you very much for being with us for this session. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharmaji.
Thank you.
So we are towards the end of the session. Thank you very much again, Mr. Jonathan. I saw you on one of the Srijan talks and got really impressed and tried to connect. And luckily, we have you here in our IAF forum. So welcome again. And on behalf of the entire team, Ashwin Bora, Vijay Shetty, Amit Karant, Raj Bala, and all members of IAF, and obviously with Stephen Manolak, thank you again. Thank you so much. Let's be in touch and enlighten us with your mathematics.
Yep.
All Indian subcom.
Well, let me correct you. Let me just correct you there. It's India's mathematics. I'm simply the champion who I feel like I've discovered buried treasure, and I want to give it back to its rightful owner.
Thank you. That's a pleasure for all of us. Thank you again. Thank you everyone who have joined the Zoom session. You can also see this recording on our Facebook page, which is India Australia Exchange Forum. You can re-watch it, and you can benefit from it and get connected with all of us.
Yeah, and once the coronavirus everything is over, probably we will have a face-to-face session very soon with Jonathan and Stephen, everything together over there. I think that we can make it soon.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Namaste. Have a lovely day. Have a lovely Sunday evening.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Namaste all.
Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.